The silence in Sarah Chen's penthouse office was deafening. After 12 years of building her tech empire, she had mastered the art of control. Every meeting scheduled to the minute, every decision calculated for maximum profit. But tonight, as she stared at her reflection in the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown Seattle, she felt utterly powerless. Her 7-year-old daughter Emma hadn't slept in 3 days. The doctors had tried everything: melatonin, weighted blankets, white noise machines, even prescription sleep aids that made Sarah's stomach churn to consider. But Emma, diagnosed with severe autism 2 years ago, remained wide awake, rocking back and forth in her bedroom, her small hands pressed against her ears as if trying to block out a world that felt too loud, too bright, too overwhelming. Sarah had cancelled another board meeting that morning, her third this week. The investors were getting restless, whispering about her dedication to the company. If only they knew that her real battle wasn't in the boardroom, it was in a little girl's bedroom where exhaustion and desperation painted dark circles under both their eyes. 3 floors below, Marcus Williams pushed his janitor's cart down the empty hallway, humming softly to himself. At 42, he had worked the night shift at Chen Technologies for 6 months, a job that barely covered rent for the cramped apartment he shared with his 8-year-old son, Tyler. The divorce had taken everything of the house, most of their belongings, and his confidence. But it hadn't taken his voice. Marcus had once dreamed of Broadway, back when optimism came easier and bills seemed smaller. Now, his audience consisted of empty offices and sleeping computers, but he still sang. It was the one piece of his former self he refused to surrender, even if it meant serenading trash cans and photocopiers. "You are my sunshine, my only sunshine," he sang softly, his rich baritone echoing gently through the corporate corridors. "You make me happy when skies are gray." What Marcus didn't know was that his voice carried through the building's ventilation system, traveling upward like a musical prayer. And what Sarah didn't know was that for the past week, Emma had been falling asleep to the sound of a stranger's lullabies. The revelation came by accident. Sarah had been pacing Emma's room at 2 a.m., her daughter finally still after hours of restless movement, when she heard a faint melody drifting through the air vent. Emma's breathing had deepened, her small body finally relaxing into sleep for the first time in days. The custodial staff needs to maintain professional standards, Sarah found herself saying the next morning to building security, her voice sharp with the exhaustion that made every decision feel like survival. "No singing during work hours. It's disruptive." She didn't mention that she'd been listening from her office, or that the voice had made her think of her own father, who used to sing to her before bedtime stories. Professional boundaries mattered more than childhood memories, she told herself. The company couldn't run on sentiment. Marcus received the warning with a quiet nod, though something dimmed in his eyes. He understood the rules of survival: keep your head down, don't make waves, protect the paycheck that kept food on Tyler's table. But that night, as he worked in silence, the empty hallways felt colder somehow. Emma didn't sleep for the next 2 nights. By the 3rd sleepless evening, Sarah was barely functional. She'd snapped at her assistant, missed 2 important calls, and found herself crying in the bathroom during lunch. When she came home to find Emma having a complete meltdown, throwing herself against her bedroom wall while tears streamed down her face, Sarah felt something break inside her chest. "Please, baby, what do you need?" she whispered, kneeling beside her daughter. "Just tell mommy what you need." Emma couldn't tell her, couldn't explain that the voice that had become her anchor to sleep was gone. She could only rock and cry and wait for a sound that would never come. It was Tyler Williams who inadvertently revealed the connection. The next morning, standing in the school pickup line, he tugged on his father's sleeve. "Dad, Why don't you sing at work anymore? You always used to come home humming those songs." Marcus glanced around the schoolyard, embarrassed. "Work rules, buddy. Sometimes grown-ups have to follow rules even when they don't make sense. But singing makes everything better," Tyler said with the absolute certainty of childhood. "Remember when I couldn't sleep after Mom left? Your songs always helped." The words hit Marcus like a revelation. He thought about the building's layout, the ventilation system, the executive floor directly above his cleaning route. Could his voice really have traveled that far? Could someone else's child have found comfort in the same melodies that had soothed his own son through the darkest nights of their lives? That evening, Marcus made a choice that could cost him his job. As his cart rolled past the executive floor, he began to sing softly at first, then with growing confidence. "When you're weary, feeling small, when tears are in your eyes, I will dry them all." 3 floors up, Emma's breathing began to slow. Sarah, who had been preparing another cup of coffee she wouldn't drink, froze in her kitchen. The voice was back, and with it, the first peaceful silence her home had known in days. She took the elevator down to investigate, her heart pounding with a mixture of curiosity and dread. What she found was Marcus, headphones around his neck, singing to an empty hallway with the kind of raw emotion that only comes from understanding true loss. "Excuse me," she said, stepping out of the elevator. Marcus turned, his face immediately paling as he recognized the CEO. "Miss Chen, I can explain." "My daughter," Sarah interrupted, her voice barely above a whisper. "She's autistic. She hasn't slept in days." She paused, struggling with words that felt too vulnerable for these sterile hallways. "But when you sing, she sleeps. I don't understand how, but she does." Marcus stared at her, seeing not the intimidating CEO who'd issued his warning, but a mother at the end of her rope. "I have a son," he said quietly. "Music helps him too. I'm sorry if I broke the rules, Buta." "No," Sarah said quickly. "I'm the one who should be sorry." "I didn't understand." She looked at this man who cleaned her offices, who had unknowingly been singing her daughter to sleep, who had lost his job prospects because she'd been too proud to admit she needed help. Could you possibly come upstairs, just for a few minutes?" What happened next would be talked about in the building for years to come. The CEO and the janitor, standing in a little girl's bedroom, watching as a child who rarely accepted comfort from strangers walked directly to Marcus and took his hand. "Sing," Emma said, one of the few words she used regularly. Marcus looked at Sarah, who nodded through tears she didn't try to hide. And in that room filled with expensive furniture and educational toys that couldn't provide what a child truly needed, he sang. Emma was asleep within minutes. "I fired you for the wrong reasons," Sarah said afterward, as they stood in her living room. "I'd like to offer you a different position. Day shift, better pay, and..." She smiled, the first genuine expression Marcus had seen from her. Singing encouraged. 6 months later, Marcus Williams became the director of facilities, but more importantly, he became the voice that helped one little girl navigate a world that often felt too overwhelming to bear. And Sarah Chen learned that sometimes the most important business decisions happen not in boardrooms, but in the quiet moments when humanity matters more than profit margins. Tyler and Emma became unlikely friends, and Sarah discovered that the best lullabies aren't always sung by parents, or sometimes they come from strangers who understand that everyone needs a song to help them through the dark.